Good afternoon to the Leander ISD Facebook community. We are here for another Let's Talk with Dr. Troxell. I'm Corey Ryan, our Chief Communications Officer. How are you doing this afternoon, Dr. Troxell?
I'm having a great day. I hope everybody in the audience is as well.
As we're waiting for some questions to trickle in, we're going to go ahead and just kind of get the ball rolling with some hot topics from our most recent board meeting. Our Board of Trustees heard a presentation about our Program Advisory Committee, which is evaluating different program expansions in the academic and extracurricular world. Can you talk about what the work of our PAC is and who makes up our PAC?
The PAC is made up of community members and members of our faculty. The PAC comes to us really from the DWIC, which is our District-Wide Education Improvement Council. So we have representatives from throughout all the district who are meeting together to look at different programs that we may expand into in the future. So the Board of Trustees is given the directive really for the administration to work with the community to look at new and exciting programs. It could be anything from a magnet program at a particular campus or a specific request that has come into the Board of Trustees or to the administration. One of those, for example, is Orchestra.
One of the biggest questions we get, I think, has been about Orchestra in terms of why don't we have it at our high schools. We actually got the question and followed up at the end of the last broadcast. Can you talk a little bit, Dr. Troxell, about what all kind of would go into a decision and kind of focus specifically on Orchestra?
Well, you know, Corey, I love Orchestra. As a matter of fact, in 2 districts where I previously have served, Orchestra got started. But Orchestra is a program we're going to have to research very thoroughly. There is financial costs, certainly to any program that you add to a school district. Orchestra has startup costs because you have to have instruments, you got to pay for new teachers. You actually have to take each of the rooms that the orchestra equipment is stored into and put in dehumidifiers to make sure that the string instruments are protected. So there's a lot of upfront cost, but there's a lot of benefits to it as well. There are students that sometimes don't participate in other fine arts activities that will get involved in orchestra. So we'll look at everything from cost to the number of students that it would impact. We'll look at whether it's better to matriculate it beginning in the lower grades and working up through high school or starting at the high school and working back. And we'll have those recommendations for the board probably as soon as early spring.
Okay, we got our first question here. I'm having trouble expanding it, so I apologize. I can't see the whole thing right now, but I think this was a question we got at our last hearing, our last Facebook Live, and didn't get a chance to do, and it's regarding a parent who's interested in bringing a play or a performance to Parkside Elementary School. How would you advise a parent who wants to see something new at their campus, specifically if it were about an after-school event or a performance?
The first thing you should do is go and have a meeting with your child's teacher to talk about what your interests are and what you want to bring to the campus. It may be something that actually ties into the curriculum or what we're learning in school on a regular basis. And then you'd want to go and talk to the campus administration beyond that. There are a lot of activities that happen after school that parents bring forward to us on a regular basis. We're always looking at, does the program meet the community standards, and does it also enrich and enhance what we're already doing in our curriculum? So the first step is really to go back to the campus and meet with the principal and the teachers.
The parent's saying that she's met with the principal. Is there any other advice that you would give in terms of a parent who's trying to work through working with the principal?
Well, if you work with the principal and that you have the principal's blessing and approval, then the next step beyond that would be to work with the principal to get it also approved on your campus for the use of the facilities, because there's facility usages that are happening every evening on each of our campuses. And we got to make sure that the cafeteria, the multi-purpose room is available for the activity you're trying to put forward. So that would be the next step, is to go and look at the facility usage to make sure that there's rental fees or things that have to be covered. Now, it may not cost you anything, particularly if it's an activity that the school is going to work with you on, because it's going to expand and enhance the curriculum that we're already teaching.
While we wait for some additional people to tune in and ask some questions, we'll go back and talk about some of the things at the last board meeting. One of the big topics that the board approved in funding the AC on school buses. Can you talk a little bit about the plan Leander ISD is going to invoke and the board graciously funded to be able to put AC on our school buses?
Well, you know, the Board of Trustees wanted to make sure first and foremost that our students are always safe and that they have a comfortable ride and a way to get to school and from school. So this took a number of board meetings to discuss what all of our options are. They also wanted to do it in a manner that was financially reasonable and fiscally prudent. So we wanted to look at what dollars did we have available to us already that was allocated towards transportation and towards busing. And one of those was the generous approval by the community of our November 2017 bond referendum, which gave us about $10.5 million to spend towards busing. So the first thing that the Board of Trustees did is to give the permission to the administration to purchase all new buses with AC. And we have about 126 buses that are what are called route buses, or pick students up in elementary, middle school, and high school, and then take them home during the day. So those route buses are being actually fitted, the new ones being purchased through bond money. Then we also had some grants that were available to us through the Department of Transportation, and those grants were to take diesel buses out of service and replace them with propane buses, which are much more environmentally friendly and also use less fuel to operate. So as we used that type of funding, we went back and were able to retrofit the buses we're purchasing with those dollars that were giving to us with AC, but also taking the current fleet and retrofitting the newer buses in that fleet, because we didn't want to take a bus that had a very short lifespan and use that bus and retrofit it and then have it be out of use within a couple years. So we looked at about 8 to 10 years of usable life left on a bus, and that's about 100,000 miles or less, because buses go about 200,000 miles, or about 8 years of service left, because buses go about 15 or 16 years of service. So very pleased that the Board of Trustees was able to come up with this decision to put air conditioning on all route buses. By the way, we currently have that on all of our special education buses, and one of the buses that's used for trips and extracurricular activities after school.
And we have one of our viewers, Valerie. I just want to let you know that it sounds like we have a specific issue kind of isolated to one campus that we definitely want to reach out and get more information on, but it might be something we need to do one-on-one, not necessarily in this format. But thank you for your question, and someone from our team will definitely reach out to collect more information. Please, anybody who's tuning in, please feel free to submit your questions. We're going to continue to talk about the board meeting from last week, just to keep the dialogue going, allow people some time to ask additional questions. One of the other big things was, as part of the policy update, the board took a look at our low-cost meal option and some adjustments to our practice in making sure that every child gets a meal and families have every opportunity, or have as many opportunities as we can provide to be able to have access to a full or typical school lunch. Can you talk a little bit about the low-cost meal policy change?
Corey, I'll be happy to. You know, one of the things that's very important to the Board of Trustees, but also to the administration, is that all of our students are fed throughout the school day so they can be focused, happy, and healthy and productive in school. And so I want to be clear about a couple things. We have students that are on free lunches. Those are families that sometimes just have difficulty making ends meet. Those students will always get a meal every day in school. But there's some families, through no fault of their own, that have temporary situations, and they need to have a low-cost meal or another option granted to them. So one of the things that the Board of Trustees did in policy was to grant a long period of time, or a longer period of time than we've had in the past, where parents will be notified that they're getting low on their accounts, and then even after they exceed the low account number, they're actually down to zero on their balance, they will still continue to get notices and will still continue to provide the students with a full meal. Now, once they hit $15 into the hole, into the negative, they're still going to get food, but the food is a low-cost meal, and that will consist of a cheese sandwich or some other entree that's approved for that month. It won't always be the same. That's one of the policy changes the board looked at. It will include a vegetable or fruit, and we're going to try to include both of those in many of the meals. It will also include milk. So we're going to make sure that our students are always fed at lunch and breakfast, regardless of what their accounts say. The other thing we talked about at length is when a student goes through the line, because you always hear these horror stories on the news, a student will never have a tray taken away from them. We are instructing our staff, and the board has agreed that students who go through the line will always have whatever they put onto their tray being given to them for their meal.
Well, we have a captivated audience. We do want to share some big events that are coming up in the school district. Next Monday is our Festival of Bands. It's an amazing event that features all of our high school and middle school bands. It'll be at Gupton Stadium on October 1st, and we'd love to see everybody out there. Dr. Troxell, it's the middle of band season. Can you talk a little bit about our marching bands?
Well, our marching bands are phenomenal, and I think people in the community know that, but not only are they state champions, but the conduct of our bands is amazing. I'm going to tell you a real quick story. So Monday rolled around and I get emails over the weekend and I go through those emails, but on Monday I really try to respond back to everyone who sent me a message. And we received an email from the people in Pflugerville ISD that ran the field. It's PFIELD. And it was talking about how our bands behaved during the rainstorm delay that Vandergrift High School had when they played Pflugerville-Hendrickson. And that the band students were so respectful of all of the adults that were there trying to load equipment so it didn't get damaged in the rainstorm. They were patient, they were helpful to the other band. That's what makes me proud as a superintendent. It's not only the incredible performance of our kids during halftime performances and during showcases that they do throughout not just Texas but the nation, but it's the character and their conduct that they have off the field. And our band programs truly are second to none. The great part about Monday is it's not just about varsity bands or high school bands. You'll also see middle school bands perform at the end with the high school bands. So it's really an extravaganza of bands 7th through 12th grade.
That's awesome. We're very much excited to see that. We're still waiting on some additional questions. Please feel free to chime in and share a question with the superintendent. Dr. Troxell, is there anything that you want to make sure that the people at home know about things that are going on in Leander ISD?
You know, there's a tremendous amount that's going on each and every day. The most important thing is what's happening in the classroom with your individual child or grandchild or next door neighbor. You know, what makes this district really special and I think makes it unique is the quality of teachers that we get. I tell people this stat because I find it interesting, but it's also true about how this is a magnet for great teachers. For every elementary opening, we have about 1,000 applications. So we have a really high caliber of people to select from to work with our kids in the classroom. And I want to assure parents that's always the focus of making sure that the classroom teachers have the resources they need. But I also want the teachers that are listening today to know how much we appreciate them. A board meeting does not go by where the board doesn't talk about how lucky we are to have the people we have in the classrooms. But I can also tell you, we have fantastic principals that are leading each of our campuses.
We got a new question coming in. It's from Carla, and she's asking about collecting community feedback and the value in that. And Carla, you referenced a specific slide that you saw at DWIC regarding the DOI calendar. I don't have it in front of me, but I don't remember that number being that low. The crux of the question is, can you help us understand how the parent and community input is evaluated and how we communicate that input with the board?
There is a tremendous amount of parent input that we take and community input from a number of sources throughout the year. The first thing we have is we have regular surveys that go out to the community as well as to our parents on various topics. It could be DOI, which was really focusing on calendar. It could be something related specifically to curriculum that we're looking at, or it could be new programs like we mentioned earlier, the PAC that's going to be studying with the help of community members the expansion of programs. So we have various ways of surveying the community on specific topics. In addition to that, we have a lot of different ways that parents and community members can be involved in their schools. The first one that comes to mind is our PTAs and our booster clubs. We have a lot of parent input through PTAs and booster clubs about what's happening regularly each day on our campuses. And we take that information and we use that information in a positive way to inform decisions or recommendations that we take to the Board of Trustees. There are some times when the Board of Trustees puts out very specific questions that they want to know to the community. We may have a landing page on some type of social media site that we're asking for very specific feedback on about a topic. We are going to have issues from new schools that are being built regularly to rezoning that happens anytime you have a new school that opens up, that will constantly seek feedback. So our Board of Trustees, I think, as well as any place I've ever seen, seeks feedback. Now, the thing about feedback is it's not necessarily a vote for an item or a specific way of getting a referendum item onto an agenda for the Board of Trustees. The board has to look at certainly community feedback and parent feedback, and sometimes those are at odds. Sometimes the community and the parents feel differently about an item, but they want to make sure that they hear from the staff, from our community, from our parents, from all those who are impacted, all of our stakeholders when they're making key decisions. And they have to weigh that against sometimes financial concerns, really logistics and things that are happening across the district to really see, does this impact kids in a positive manner and make a difference in their lives each and every day as they come to school.
So with regards to your specific question, Carla, I found the slide that we presented to the board. So what we saw from the last board, what we submitted was feedback on the calendar, and I can't speak to what you saw at DWIC because I don't have that slide, but it doesn't seem to match what we presented to the board. So I don't know, I can't reference specifically what you saw because I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you we often communicate with the board through email and then through regular meetings. And I believe through DOI we had that as part of the presentations leading up to it. So again, please feel free to send me the slide and take a look at it, and I can certainly talk to our group that runs our DWIC committee.
And we can certainly get back to Carla one-on-one. We can make sure that you guys communicate with her directly and get any information that she needs. So any questions that come in we don't have that are very specific, and we don't have the specific slide or information, we'll always get back to you and make sure you have the information and the answers you seek.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Dr. Troxell, one of the things that we've been trying to focus on is collecting input and feedback from students, and working with your office on student voice. We've certainly done that in the last 2 months. One of the big topics that we hear from students is regarding the web filter, and we had to make some changes to the web filter this year to make sure we were in compliance with federal law, being that the LISD devices are school district and funded through dollars that require us to be able to restrict access to inappropriate content. Talk a little bit more about the web filter.
Be happy to. You know, the number one thing as a superintendent that you worry about is the safety of your student body. And we want to make sure that through our own devices and our web filtering, we're keeping access to information from students that's inappropriate. But sometimes when you filter that, it filters out good content from the students. And so we always ask the students to do is to let us know that, and we can unfilter those sites. So there's a specific step by talking to your teacher or actually submitting it to technology directly on the technology webpage. We can examine the particular page you're trying to access and give you access to it. You know, we had something that occurred earlier this week, and it's a good example of that. We had a group of elementary students that were trying to access what should have been a site through YouTube that was showing them how to do some projects they were working on. It was actually filtered out because YouTube had put it as an inappropriate website for children at that age, but really it was not something that needed to be filtered out. And I'm sure YouTube and other sites sometimes have difficulty as well knowing if it's appropriate for the age level of the child. So sometimes we have to go through multiple steps to get some of those sites unblocked. But I'd rather block too much content and then have to go piecemeal by piecemeal to unblock it so our students are looking at appropriate materials through our own LISD devices than to have the other occur and that students have access to things they shouldn't be viewing.
And we've received a lot of this feedback and worked with our technology office to pass this along, as they're the people who can make changes. And one of the biggest things we do here for parents at home and hearing this kind of feedback from your kids, make sure that they report and ask for access to it, especially if it's an educational resource. Our technology team can't do their job if they're not getting reported to be able to review those. And they don't see a lot of the websites being asked for permission to come back and be reviewed. So please encourage your children to make sure, or the students in your household, that they click that button and go ahead and get it reviewed. Andrea asked us, Dr. Troxell, about the PTA candidate forums for our board elections. We have 4 open board seats and 10 candidates in our local community seeking election this November. The question is regarding to candidate forums and then posting videos on the candidate forums after the fact on Leander ISD resources. Can you kind of go through some of the feedback we've gotten from our attorneys in terms of what we can do in these candidate forums? There's
a tremendous amount of law that really regulates what we can do and what we can't do as it relates to candidate forums. The biggest thing, and you really want to look at it from a 50,000-foot perspective, is that the district cannot use its resources, nor can employees use the resources that are given to them through the district and our taxpayers to endorse or to not endorse a candidate. So we always have to walk a very fine line to determine, is the allowance of something to occur, could it be perceived to be endorsing a specific candidate? Because what we want to do is remain completely neutral. I would also want that to occur not just with the school board of trustees, but with people running for the Senate, in the Texas House or the U.S. Senate and Congress, because we want to make sure that we're not using taxpayer dollars in a manner that our taxpayers haven't agreed to. We certainly don't want to have a situation where it would appear that we favor one candidate over another. I can tell you as a superintendent who's been doing this for a long time now, in my 16th year, that's always a very fine line you walk, because I'm going to end up working with whoever are the 7 elected board members. And so we want to make sure that our district is very neutral in any election. And there's a lot of times that the rules and regulations that we put forth are really not coming from us. They're coming from the Attorney General's office or the Secretary of State's office or some other governmental entity that oversees elections. Sometimes federal offices that give us really specific guidelines about how we operate.
Another common question we get in that topic of elections is how do we work with registering students? In Leander ISD, there was actually a story last year, was one of only a few districts in compliance in making sure through our senior social studies programs, we're going ahead and registering kids to vote.
You know, one of the things, and again, this is something I was blessed to inherit, it's not something I created, but we have a very strong social studies department, and within the department we have some really well-written curriculum. So one of the things that our district has been doing for years is registering through government classes kids to register to vote. So we have had that as a part of our normal routine, and we think that's an important part of being a good citizen. It certainly doesn't favor one candidate over another. It simply tells our student body that part of a quality education is to give back, and part of that giving back is to take an active part in elections and to go actually vote, because it's one of the really prized parts of our democracy.
We had another question coming in about a specific program that we have called ContentKeeper, which is one of the tools that our technology team uses to make sure that we're monitoring what kids are saying and doing on social media for their safety and wellness. Carla, you asked a specific question about what information and data does ContentKeeper collect. I believe that's information that's probably kept track of in our student data privacy agreement.
Yeah, and ContentKeeper has actually been very beneficial to students themselves. There has been occasional times when students have gone on to various social media sites or through our own media and said some things about self-harm or things that they're going to do to themselves. I will tell you that it's also monitored not through us, but there also are police departments in the area that monitor various social media sites to look for things that students may be doing to self-harm. It really has saved lives, and I think it's an incredibly valuable asset. There's not a database that we're housing with the information. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to screen through and to help kids get through serious situations. Unfortunately, not every student who's facing a crisis in their life is going to go to a teacher or go to a counselor. A lot of times they're expressing themselves through social media. So that's why it's monitored so closely. We want to make sure that all kids are kept safe. It's a really positive thing. It's a way of ensuring that all of our kids really have productive and happy lives.
So we're getting into October, Dr. Troxell, and you know, I was always been told working in schools, once you get past Labor Day, it's not the start of the school anymore, and certainly when you get into October.
Right.
What was your favorite part of the beginning of the school year?
Well, my favorite part was the first day when I got to visit with all the new campus principals who are just doing an amazing job. We're, again, blessed that people from throughout the state and actually throughout the country applied for some of our open principalships. So the first day of school, I got to go out and visit each of those campuses, and it was just a lot of fun.
I can tell you, I agree. The first day of school was amazing. Getting out to see our schools, getting out to see the different people. I had the pleasure a couple weeks ago of visiting with one of our amazing crossing guards, who's been doing it for 10 years. It's just her biggest passion is being able to see the students on Friday and then pick up the conversation again on Monday whenever it starts. We just have so many passionate people that work in Leander ISD. We're going to continue to take questions for the next 6 minutes here. If we continue to get questions, we're happy to keep answering and talking. If your question doesn't come up or get answered today, or if you're watching this after the fact, please go ahead and ask it. You could also visit support.leanderisd.org. We have a database, our knowledge base, full of different questions, FAQs, and answers. Dr. Troxell, what are you most looking forward to in the month of October with our schools?
You know, in the month of October, we start to see a change in weather. So that's always an excitement because you have kids that just get energized by cooler weather. One of the things I love about this month is really we see the conclusion of some activities that come to fruition. And that could be, for example, our volleyball season, which really kicks into high gear as October comes near its end. It could be some of the academic competitions as well. So it's great to see kids at this point in the year really come to fruition in whatever they're competing in and whatever they're doing. I also like the month of October because it brings out some celebrations of fall and what we do in the fall throughout the schools. But I want to also comment and make sure people know, sometimes you're asking very specific questions, and I'm not really sure 100% what you want to get into detail. So if we're not answering specifically, please follow up with us. We will be happy to get back to you if the question is answered at too broad of a stroke, but we're trying to make sure that we're answering questions from throughout our 40,000 student school district.
And Yvonne, you asked a great question. Moving on, it is regarding the size of the schools. So where can she find the student limit per school? In terms of finding it, and I'll let Dr. Troxell explain a little bit more about what school capacities are about. But with regards to where you can find that information, every year we publish a demographer report on our website, and you can find the link searching our website for demographer report. It's a third-party study that assesses where we're going to grow and adding students. On that report also lists the building capacity for what that school was built for. Dr. Troxell, can you talk a little bit about school building capacities and how we use it?
Be happy to. First of all, there is no legal limit to the size a school can be. The legislature has never taken that into consideration. And the school board does adopt some guidelines, but those guidelines sometimes are exceeded because we have unusual growth in certain parts of the district. So our high schools are typically built for about 2,400 students. When we look at middle schools, it's about 1,200, and elementary is about 800. But we have schools that exceed that. So how do they exceed it? Well, they exceed it by sometimes putting additional portables at a building, and then you are allowed to exceed that capacity. They exceed it by sometimes having teachers actually not be assigned to a classroom, particularly at the secondary level. They may travel between multiple classrooms. So instead of one teacher per room, you may have two teachers per room. The reason I say that is when you look at Vandergrift High School, for example, we just had a bond referendum to allow Vandergrift to grow to 500 additional students. So Vandergrift will be actually a capacity of 2,900. The state does have limits to class sizes. In K through 4, it's 22-1. But the state allows you to exceed that through a waiver, and you may get a 23rd student in the classroom. And the reason you do that is you don't want to split a first grade classroom 2 weeks into the school year. So you ask the state, can we go and add that 23rd student to it? If it's a difficult situation, we may actually add an IA or an instructional assistant in that classroom as well, but not in every situation.
Thank you, sir. And Jaime, you asked another question kind of in terms of that same alignment. It's about school boundaries and redrawing attendance areas. Jaime, you asked for an outlook for fall of 2019 and 2020. We did redraw boundaries for fall of 2019 at elementary schools, but it only really impacted Plain Elementary in Pleasant Hill with the opening of Elementary School 27, which will serve in the Larkspur area. Dr. Troxell, you want to talk about some upcoming discussions and plans that we're anticipating with regards to the opening of the next school for 2020.
So what will happen in October, one of the things we are looking forward to is getting our demographic report. We always get it during the month of October, and we get it from an individual who actually has a business out of College Station. So it's not somebody in district, so we can get a very, very fine look at what's happening and an independent evaluation of the growth. When the board gets that information, then we start talking about where we need to place our next elementary schools. We do know a lot of that growth is going to be in the north, so you're going to see a lot of schools going in the north. But we're also going to have a need for additional middle schools and high schools. So some of the conversation will also be talking about the next middle school, which actually was in the last bond package as well. Likely that's going to go across from Glenn High School. I don't see any reason it wouldn't at this point, but we do have other sites available for middle schools. So we will wait to see what the demographer shows us, and then the Board of Trustees will make that decision. But we should be placing on the ground about one elementary school each year for the next 10 years, and a middle school about every 4 to 5 years, and then a high school, it depends on the growth, but looking at probably anywhere from 6 to 8 years. And that's why bond packages are necessary periodically throughout the district.
Dr. Troxell, we have another question about academics and about a new program we instituted last year to be able to help create individual conversations about student success and grades. The question comes from about the INOVA program. How successful was it last year, and how does the district measure its return on investment?
Well, you think about this. The highest rated in terms of overall score of any district in all of Central Texas were 2 districts. It was Eanes and it was Leander that got a 95% score. Now, the state has some ways of calculating that and using a lot of different factors. As a matter of fact, the A through F system has over 100 pages to explain it, so it's pretty complex. But that's one indicator it was very successful. What's more important is the growth of individual kids. The state does have a growth measurement, but it doesn't look at growth of individual kids. A regression analysis, which is really what INOVA is, looks at an individual student to see how much that student grew from year to year. And let me put it this way. If it took $10 worth of knowledge to pass a test, and a student came in with $20 worth of knowledge, they're going to pass the test. But if they went back to $18 worth of knowledge and then $16 worth of knowledge, you're going to keep passing the test year after year, but they're not going to be growing a full year. What the INOVA process does is show us, did that student maintain $20 worth of knowledge or grow beyond that? Also, the state does not consider student growth. If a student's sitting at $2 worth of knowledge and grows to $4 worth of knowledge, they still fail the test, right, because it took $10. But the state doesn't measure that growth as a success. We do in our district with this process. So what we're looking at is each individual and having a plan for each individual student and their growth. Not just students in particular programs, but all students. To look at how do we measure growth from year to year so that even if you're at the highest level of performance, by the time you exit us, you're maintaining that high level of performance or beyond. What it's also done is allow us to look at how we're spending our money on different interventions. The principals are going back right now and analyzing that data and looking at, did this intervention work with this group of students? The INOVA data, and we'll be able to move this in-house very shortly, allows us to do that through a simple statistical analysis. Again, if you're in the audience and you don't want your child to be a part of this, you don't want your child to be a part of the testing, you can certainly opt out. We have plenty of other families that really find this data extremely valuable, but more importantly, our teachers can use it to help students to grow and look at what's really important in education, and that's the growth of academic, social, and emotional well-being of our kids.
And I can tell you, sir, one of the things that is most exciting to see when you go to campuses is the teacher collaboration time where they are talking about the individual success of specific kids. And we really just have amazing teachers in Leander ISD and are very, very, very blessed.
It's the process, Corey. I think it's the process of teachers sitting down, not just looking at the curriculum to make sure that the curriculum is well aligned and students are learning what they need to learn, but it's also talking about individual kids. It really has those conversations at a deep level, which is the best part about what we do in education.
We're going to stay on for a couple more minutes because some new questions are rolling in. We have a question from Kathleen, specifically to Stiles Middle School. Kathleen, it's probably going to be hard to speak specifically to Stiles, but the question is regarding needing portables for next year at Stiles due to growth. I think it also contributes to the idea of growth in that area of our district. Dr. Troxell, what do you think in terms of what parents can expect in terms of dealing with this high growth, especially until we open up a 10th middle school?
Well, you know, I'm somebody who's experienced a lot of growth over the course of my career, both in Leander as well as other districts. I can't tell you at this particular moment, we have to wait for the demographic projections to come in about where we're going to need portables or not. But that's something we spend the entire spring looking at as we look at the growth across a particular campus in a particular period of time. Certainly the Stiles Middle School area is a fast growth area. Aiken and Parkside, which both feed in the Stiles, are growing very, very fast. So as the kids matriculate through the system, we'll have to take that into consideration. But let me also state that it's important to know that a lot of our growth happens in middle school. There are families that keep their schools, their children, in private schools or charter schools or homeschooled until 6th grade. So sometimes we see a lot of explosion in the middle school. And I think the reason for that is the outstanding extracurricular activities and opportunities kids have at the secondary level in Leander ISD.
Dr. Troxell, next question we got is another facility-related question. It is regarding a natatorium. Is the district considered building a natatorium for the swim teams in our district? You
know, actually we have. I talked to one of my first conversations in this district was with Tom Glenn to get a little bit of the history of Leander ISD. Nobody knows this district better than Mr. Glenn. And so we talked about that. There really was a time period, not too distant in the past, when the Board of Trustees looked at natatoriums very seriously and actually had it on a bond referendum. Unfortunately at that time, for whatever reason, it did not pass. It's something that comes up regularly in conversations, and it certainly came up to the bond committee the last time around. I will tell you, as somebody, again, who's been in a district that's added a natatorium, they're wonderful additions, particularly for the swim teams and club teams and extracurricular activities, but they're an extremely expensive endeavor. And so you always have to look at the cost benefit, and that's usually one of the prohibitors from keeping natatoriums being built. The other thing is our district spread out over 200 square miles. So just the driving distance sometimes is going to necessitate more than likely more than one natatorium if you're going to do it, so that all 6 high schools and at some point in the future 7 and 8 high schools will have that type of access.
We do want to just let all of our viewers out there also know tonight is the College Fair, Vista Ridge High School, 6 to 8 o'clock. Should be a great event. One of the beautiful things about technology is you get access to all this different information. One of the negatives, you get access to lots of information, and the power dies. So I apologize for that. I might have to switch to my phone to get to the last few questions here tonight. Dr. Troxell, I believe we got a question regarding keeping track of students who are attending our schools but may not necessarily live in our boundaries. Do we need what are the checks and balances that a school district has to confirm residency or to work in terms of residency with students?
You know, that's one of the things we really rely on our community for tremendously. If students are coming into our district who don't live in our district, we need to know about that. There are times when you'll find out, I can tell you as a principal in 2 different districts, you'll find out simply by the communications you send home. When you send home report cards or updates to what's happening in your district, many times those will be returned or they'll be to addresses outside of your school district, and at that time you have to sit down with the family and get them enrolled in the district where they actually reside. We're not a district that allows interdistrict transfers. There are some that do, we don't, but most of the time that information actually comes from neighbors and community members making us aware of situations that we then investigate. We actually have truancy officers who don't just work on truancy, they can also help us with boundary issues to investigate. You know, I will tell you that there have been times in my experience, particularly as a principal, where somebody thought somebody was living outside the district, but actually they had parents that maybe are separated or temporarily separated and they're living in our district with just one of the parents. So we always want to be sensitive to the fact that there could be very specific circumstances with an individual child.
And also, Leander ISD employees can send their kids to our schools, which oftentimes is something...
They can. It's one of the things the Board of Trustees has done to lure really employees into the district, particularly when you think about, I mentioned earlier, you know, for every opening, particularly at the elementary, we have 1,000 candidates. But at the secondary level, when you're talking about advanced placement chemistry, you're talking about special education, or you're talking about teachers who teach kids who have limited English skills, sometimes those teachers are more difficult to recruit. Bus drivers, people who are going to do really some of the most important work in our district, that policy allows them to bring their kids. So sometimes they're coming with their parents who work for us.
All right, we got one more question, and it comes from Betty. It is about a transportation app that the district has been looking to implement, which will work with our GPS systems on our school buses to be able to give parents up-to-the-minute notification as to what our, where and when our buses will arrive. Dr. Troxell, do you have any update on the transportation app?
I do. We're actually piloting that with a number of parents throughout the district and its very specific sites to make sure that it's accurate and it's up-to-date. We also want to make sure that the parents who are getting the information are actually the legal guardians for the child, because we want to make sure that it's going into the right hands. It's very important that all that be worked out before we launch it district-wide. We have a pretty amazing transportation center that can really watch every single bus. We know where every bus is at any point through our GPS system. This allows us to share that information with the legal guardian of the child to make sure that you know if the bus is running late, or if the bus is arriving late in the morning to pick your child up. I hope that we can launch that fully across the district in the next 6 to 12 months. But you want us to work out all the details before we launch something of that nature.
And also, too, Betty, I know it's not the perfect process, but we are working with our transportation office to send some automated notifications through email. It's just challenging right now given our current way we collect contact information. In terms of how we can notify everybody with regards to the bus. The app is going to be a great solution, and we look forward to being able to launch that and provide all of our parents that additional information. Dr. Troxell, anything else you want to close on? Last month, we got to close with a video of you dancing. I don't believe we have any videos of you dancing this month.
There's probably just one out there. No, I want to thank everyone who tuned in today to watch this live event. Really continue to communicate with us. There was a great question about how do we communicate with the community and how we share that information with the Board of Trustees. I can tell you this event is one of the ways that we communicate with the wider really community of Leander ISD. So thank you for tuning in today. We're going to be doing this every month, so I hope you'll tune in again next month. Send us your questions ahead of time, because then we can prepare very specifically for your answers. But please feel free to ask questions at any time. And again, Corey, thank you and thank your team for organizing this.
We do have an amazing team. This isn't just, this is a very calculated production because we want to make sure that we can reach our people as best we can. Give us feedback about the production. We want to make sure that this is something that works for everybody. We're open to tweaking the times, finding different opportunities. We've also had discussion on doing these more targeted with specific presentations. So really, we want to engage with our community, get into your neighborhood, get into your home, and provide you with the information because we're very passionate as a school district, from our school board to our teachers, in making sure that we connect people with information about our schools. Thank everybody for tuning in. I think we've actually answered all of the questions except some of the specific ones. We'll be getting back in touch with you all. Support.leanderisd.org. Make sure you're checking that out for information and being able to continue to ask questions. We got College Fair tonight, 6 to 8 at Vista Ridge High School. Looking to Daniel to make sure that's right. Daniel's giving me the thumbs up, so that's right. Festival of Bands is next week, Choral Showcase. Please check leanderisd.org for all of our amazing events coming up. We love seeing our students. We love seeing our parents and community out at our events. Everybody take care.